Well, what makes a good leader? It's a question that certainly we all ask ourselves every day, and leadership is one of those things we're all after. And, of course, when we get it, you've got to embrace it and move forward. You know, in our business settings, in our life, and certainly in political, I mean, leadership is something that is so key to not only our survival, but as a society, but with us succeeding and getting to the next level. It's Malcolm Out Loud. Welcome to a Brink Thinking segment. And, again, you know the drill. It's all about how do we take an average idea and make it into an extraordinary idea. And in this case, how do we take an average leader and make that leader into an extraordinary leader? Sounds simple. Sometimes not so much. Joining me on the show here is Rolfe Arnhym, and such a pleasure, Rolfe, to have you here, buddy.
My pleasure. Good to
it
see
is
you.
Absolutely a pleasure to get Rolfe on the show. And Rolfe is one of those guys that knows a little bit about a lot of things, I find. You're a wealth of knowledge, and every time we sit, I always learn something from you. But Rolfe is chairman for Vistage, Florida. And you may know Vistage, Florida, and Vistage, of course, is all throughout the country, was the tech group. We all remember tech, of course. And so when did that name change happen, Rolfe? From
About 5 years ago, they decided that the name tech sounded too much like IT.
Okay.
And they took a look at it and decided that to better underscore the real role of now Vistage, they needed to make a name change so that the branding would be infinitely clear in terms of what they were trying to accomplish.
That's a big change because they were so well known in that space as tech, huh? Is it catching on?
At some level, I think that people continue to refer to it as tech. You know, my personal joke is it's Vistage, a French word translated to English means tech. Everybody loves it that way.
So you were spreading those rumors,
So
huh?
I'm spreading those rumors,
I love it.
and it seems to work.
I love it. That's great, though. No, but I knew it was a big change for them to do that because everybody sort of knew. All right, for those of you who don't know, tech, Vistage now, is really, I would describe it, and again, you probably better describe it than I, but as a group of executives, I think there are probably all types. I mean, CEO, chairman of the board, but probably upper management executives, probably VPs and others, I assume, managers, that meet on a monthly basis, almost like a board, if you will, as a group of confidants to each other to discuss, I guess, everything. What makes a business tick, how to create great leadership, worldviews. Is that a summary that makes sense, or?
Yeah, overly simplistically, 15,000 executives worldwide, 16 countries, and we form in groups based on the size of the business, 25 or more at one level, 5 to 6, but generally not up to 25 is another. And then you touched on a third group, and that's for direct reports, that vice president, CFO, controller individual, and in some cases an entrepreneur.
Are these groups intermixed, or are they different?
Totally different.
Okay, I didn't know that.
And yes, you're correct. They meet all day in a confidential setting, and it acts like a board of directors or like a think tank. And people come in there, and they're looking for advice so they can make better decisions and make them more quickly.
Right. Okay, so let's take this from a practical standpoint at first, Rolfe, as we talk about leadership here today. Let's discuss right now. We find ourselves desperately in need of leaders in this country. I believe, both in our businesses, in our communities, and in our governments, for that matter. I mean, leadership is badly needed. When you look at leadership of yesteryear, okay, and you look at leadership today in 2012 and moving forward, talk to me a minute on where we've come, where we're at, and maybe where we're going in relation to leadership, please.
I think today that people are overwhelmed with information, and because of the amount of information in there, leaders or managers are less inclined to make decisions as quickly as they used to make them. And a lot of that is that they feel that there's more information, something that they don't know. And you've heard the term, what am I missing? Or I don't know what I don't know.
That's right.
And a bunch of factors come into play, but the short story is they're reluctant to make that decision because they think there's something out there that they don't know that could influence that decision.
So they're maybe not being as decisive as they were, I guess.
Absolutely, 100% correct there.
So they want to consider all the factors yet in their brain. So is that slowing the whole process down? I mean,
it can slow the process down, but that's where Vistage comes into play. Because you can come into a group in a think tank type environment, and a group of your contemporaries, 12 to 15, will drill down into an issue or into a decision or an opportunity and totally vet it. And as a result of that, all of a sudden, that CEO feels more comfortable because this group of people representing many other businesses, not the same because you don't want a competitor in there, they give them advice and input, and as a result of that, at the end of it, the question is always asked, what are you going to do, when are you going to do it, and what's your first step? That has decision written all over it.
Yeah, that's a great point, man. That is a great point. And so it is all this vast information, how to get through it all, how to make the decisions and move on. All right, let's talk about, for those listeners, my goal of this show is to inspire people, this particular segment. And so let's talk about, in your opinion now, you've done this for a long time, and you've worked with executive CEOs and companies from a mentor standpoint. You've mentored lots of people. And I know you're thinking it's probably more practical than most when you get down to the nitty-gritty. But let's talk about the 1, 2, 3, Rolfe. When we talk about leadership, what do people have to do to create the right leadership environment in their, I guess in their businesses, in their lives, in their homes, in every aspect?
Well, it starts simply with a culture. And there has to be an acknowledgement or a recognition that that person that's in the corner office or in the number one seat is the place that you go for that decision. And a simple definition is, I expect that number one individual to make a decision, period.
Right. So we're looking at leadership and, again, being decisive, making the decisions, obviously. But it's, I would assume, more than that as well. I mean, all right, so a lot of people get confused with leadership and management, managing. Let's call it managing and leadership. I do see a difference with those two. What say you?
Well, there is a distinct difference. You can manage people, if you will, and that's what we hear. But if you're going to be a leader, then you're doing more than managing. You're inspiring and you're motivating.
Right.
You can manage inventory.
Right.
You can manage product. You can manage time. But the minute you put people into this equation, it becomes leadership. And that's where there is a distinctive difference. You're the motivator. Somebody wants to, I guess the best example I can give, and it's a cultural issue, do you have to go to work or do you want to go to work?
That's right.
And if you want to go to work, that means that that leader has inspired or motivated you to want to come in and do the best that you can and provide that product, that service, whatever that is.
So it sounds to me like that's a mistake a lot of people probably make, is they are trying to manage people rather than to lead people.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Absolutely, 100% spot on.
And so that is a big lesson, obviously, I think, for people. And my guess is, Rolfe, a lot of people make that mistake, and I'm no disrespect, but I think a lot of young people make that mistake. I think it's a process of learning and falling down and picking yourself and understand. I think it's something you learn, don't you, over the years?
You do learn it as a function of time. One, you become more confident in yourself and your total set of competencies, or you surround yourself with good people.
Right.
And either one or the other. Now, somebody may be a crackerjack salesperson, but that doesn't follow that they understand the other disciplines. They may not understand marketing. They may not understand sales. Right. They may not understand operations, communicating, just a host of skill sets. And that's why you surround yourself with good people, or you turn to something like Vistage, right, and through speakers and through interaction with a chair who is almost like your coach, you learn those skill sets and you learn how to communicate, and as a result, you grow as a leader. And right on the front of the promotional material that we use, there's a term right across the center. It says leadership. And what we're trying very hard to do, and what I'm working very hard at, is to take somebody from managing to leading. That's
great. That's it. I mean, that to me is the secret recipe.
Absolutely.
If you can accomplish that, you can do just about anything. When you look around our country today, Rolfe, and you look at, let's come right down the list a minute, okay? Let me start with our political leadership that we all have to deal with time and time. What is, in your opinion, what is the one thing that our political leadership is missing that you think would they'd be better served? I'm talking about them connecting and resonating with people. Is there something that you think our political leadership that is a void?
This is a slippery slope, but I might as well jump on. Yes, there's a void because we don't see leadership. We don't see decision-making. All we tend to see is why something cannot be done, or we're stalling because we're fixed in our point of view and unwilling to meet with all of those people who, for lack of another better term, bring various ideas and concepts to the table. It's my way or the highway.
Right. And that's what's happening with the political parties. It's their way or the highway.
Correct.
Which you hit it head on right there, man. Yeah, that's I think that's perfect. So until we get people to understand, these leaders understand what leadership is, and that they're not leading at all, is what you're suggesting.
They're not leading,
and they're just it's a feud. I mean, it's a fight.
Well, it's even simpler than that. None of them, unfortunately, have had to meet payroll, so they don't understand that side of the table.
I see.
And
maybe that's why everything's bankrupt in the country, huh?
You hit it exactly correct.
It's funny money. It's monopoly money. What the hell, right? Well, anyways, taking it from that standpoint to now our business communities. When we look at a lot of the leaders, the social media companies, the big corporations out there, and smaller and medium-sized businesses, and when we look at leadership as a whole, let's translate that now onto the business level. What do you think is the biggest thing that is needed right now? What's the void in the business sense?
Across the board, whether it's here in our own community or in the business community, and I'm beating up on the word, we do not have true leaders that are emerging from the business community that can take roles of responsibility in our community. And whether it's acting in the capacity as the chairman of United Way, or as chairman of the Chamber of Commerce, or chairman of any one of the various nonprofit organizations in the community, that seems to be missing. And it's either because they don't have the time, or there's the question of risk. And I think there's a fear of risk. Are they putting themselves out there and they then become vulnerable, either because of something in their background or a belief that they have, that they're very sensitive to assuming those positions within the community?
Well, that's interesting because, and again, it comes back to our connectivity, our 24/7 connectivity. That information is wide open now. You can run, but you can't hide.
Correct.
A lot of political leaders are finding that now. Things surface, and it showcases a real problem, something they did prior or something else. So I think, which is back to our format here, how do you be an open book today? I call it getting out loud. I think the truth resonates real well. And really, to me, getting out loud is just being truthful, getting down to the point, bringing the conversation down to the masses, and that's really the essence of what I try to do. We're not going to please each other, 24 hours a day as a society goes. I mean, we're going to have our differences, clearly, but it's being respectful, and I think you probably come from a culture where respect was earned. It's something you knew, but today it's like it's no longer a given, is it?
It is not a given, and a lot of it is, and you use the term very nicely, it's, are they willing to get out front, take a position, and take the flak if necessary?
Amen. Amen. Boy, we could stand to follow that rule in principle all the way across the board in our families, in our lives, in our businesses, and certainly in government, man. I mean, if we could get all those sectors to do exactly what you're saying there, the world would be infinitely better. Last thought as well I wanted to ask you. I understand you were in infantry colonel as well, and I'd love to have military on here. We did a great show not too long ago on patriotism, and which was amazing with our various colonels and military officers that came in, and I just have such respect for our military and what they put out there, every single day. Let's talk about that military leadership and how that maybe differs than motivation, and talk to me a little bit about that, because you have experience in that, and it's probably come in handy today.
Well, in so many ways, it is transferable. Through training,
right,
you learn to go through a process and to make decisions quickly. And you have to make decisions quickly, because in a combat situation, you do not have the luxury to ask a lot of questions. You function based on training and instinct, because people's lives are at stake.
And you have to be decisive.
Absolutely.
Back to what we talked about earlier, right?
Because they are looking for a decision maker. There's a statue at Fort Benning, which is the infantry school, which I love, and it shows a lieutenant with his weapon in one hand and his arm outstretched like this, signaling "follow me," meaning you lead from the front.
Right.
And we don't see that, if you will.
Lead from the front, not the back, huh?
Not from the back. And you don't see that often in the business community. Right. And it comes down to the fear of making the mistake that could have financial implications. It could have any number of implications. And we don't see as much risk-taking. Okay. And I think if we're going to move businesses forward, no matter what the political scenario is subsequent to this upcoming election, people are going to have to decide, I'm going to take my business to the next level. I'm going to lead, not follow.
Yeah, there's an uncertainty in the country. You can feel it. And I think, Rolfe, there's a lack of confidence. And that confidence, until that's restored, you're going to continue to have that knee-jerk reaction of people not wanting to move the agenda forward.
Yeah, and it starts with your employees. If you don't have their confidence, then they're not going to go that extra mile. They're going to simply meet the goal to get their paycheck.
Yeah,
they're not going to put themselves on the line with that suggestion, that opportunity, reaching out to the client, to the customer, with a whole idea of exceeding expectations, not meeting expectations.
Good stuff, man. I'll tell you what, I have a lot of people I talked to over the years, and it's always a pleasure to have people on the show, but I want to say to you that I knew I would enjoy having you on because you always have, I think, not just a good take on things, but your experience, and which is irreplaceable, a good grasp of the environment and from a leadership standpoint. And I think this is something that we need to get on here in this country. But how can folks track you down if need be? Is website and stuff?
Well, through the Vistage Florida website is probably the fastest way to go.
And what's that address?
VistageFlorida.com.
VistageFlorida.com. Rolfe Arnhym. You'll see the points on the screen right now here. And again, you know the drill. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity out there. Leadership is key, and leadership is at stake in this country. The question for you today is, are you going to make the leap?